Welcome back to the Quilty Life with Jenn George Burt. Today we're going to talk about a really fun and freeing way to approach improv patchwork, and that is by using prompts. So what do I mean by a prompt? You can think of it as, a gentle nudge, a suggestion, a starting point. So it is something that gets you going on a particular path when you're working on improv patchwork. So sometimes when you're working improvisationally, you'll get stuck. You are letting the fabric, the shapes guide you through the process. But honestly, sometimes your intuition, your motivation, your creativity, it leaves you hanging a little bit. So sometimes you'll find yourself staring at your stash and just thinking like, what am I going to make? And you don't know where to start. Or maybe you keep making the same sort of things you keep making over and over again, and you feel like you're in a bit of a creative rut and you just kind of want to break out of that. So in cases like that, a prompt can be a really fantastic way to break out of your creative slump and get moving forward again. So I've got some examples here of things that you can make when working with a prompt. So these on top were made in a workshop, and the prompt in this case was to make something hot pink that looked like flower petals. So this was a self-imposed prompt that I was trying to make, and I had a picture of a flower that had this sort of coloration right here, and then I came in here and pieced all of this together, all improvisationally. So this is definitely not something I would have just like randomly come up with in my brain, but now I have a bunch of hot pink petals that eventually are going to turn into a quilt. This little piece here was also made as part of a prompt. This prompt was to make it very red and to make it very angular. So this is what I came up with. And if you want to see how I made this, I actually made this on screen in one of my YouTube videos about slab work. And then this is an example of a block that is made entirely with half square triangles. So while this wasn't necessarily made as part of a prompt, it definitely could be. Someone could say use two contrasting colors and only use half square triangles and have a certain size block or something like that. So there are lots of ways that this sort of thing could have resulted from a prompt, even though that isn't actually how this one came about. Okay, and on to this big pile here. Some of you may or may not know, but I am a member of an improv bee called Quilts Unscripted, and we have members stretched all the way across the United States. And the way it works is every month, one of the members sends out a prompt to everyone else, and then everyone responds to the prompt and makes blocks for them and then sends them to them in the mail. So by the end of the year, everyone has sent everyone else a prompt, and everyone has made blocks for everyone else. It is a really fun way to work, and if you are not already part of some sort of bee on your own, I definitely recommend it. It is a lot of fun. So the prompt that inspired this pile of black and white blocks was my prompt that I sent to Quilts Unscripted members in July. And my prompt was to use black and then white and off-white. It didn't have to be white. And in fact, I encourage people to use white and off-white because I thought that would be more interesting to look at. And then my only other stipulation was that I wanted them to use the word checkerboard as their jumping off point. And they could interpret that any way they wanted to. So I want to show you some of the blocks that people sent me because they are all very different from each other, even though they all got the same prompt. So you can see some of them were more classic checkerboardy, and some are very, this one has some stripes, but it has an overall checkerboardy look. And this one changes size. And you can see they're all quite different and quite nice, and they're going to look amazing when I sew them all together. Now, I'm not telling you who made each of these individual blocks, but I will make sure that I link to my Quilts Unscripted bee, and then make sure I link you to all of them as well, so they get credit for all this lovely work that they did. Okay, so what happens though if you're not a member of a bee and you're thinking, how am I going to get a prompt if people don't send them to me? Well, there's a lot of ways you can actually come up with your own prompts. One way that's kind of fun is just to ask some unsuspecting person that you know to just say 3 adjectives for the type of artwork that they like or something like that. Just get them to randomly come up with stuff without telling them what you're actually shooting for, and then see if that gives you some great ideas. The other way is to go online. I encourage you to just go to Google and search for improv prompts for quilters. You're going to come up with blog posts, videos, web pages, all kinds of stuff that gives you some great suggestions for how to come up with prompts all on your own. Now, one of the problems that I ran into when I was trying to come up with prompts on my own is sometimes I'd get prompts that they didn't really do it for me. They weren't really sparking my creativity, and they weren't making me need to make something. Sometimes too, the prompt would say, hey, use, some color that you really hate. And you just don't want to use the color, or maybe you don't even have any of that color in your stash. So you're thinking, I can't even really do this prompt. So I came up with a way to work around that. So what I did was I came up with a way to generate randomized prompts that I would really want to use. And I found this method so fun that I decided to write a book about it. And this book is available on Amazon. You can go there and buy it right now if you would like to. It's called Randomize Your Adventure: Prompts for Improv Quilts. So let me tell you a little bit about the book, and then we'll actually use it and sew something, okay? So in the book, it first tells you how you use the book. Then there's a section here about personalization. So it asks you 15 questions and you fill it in. This book is meant to be written in. And then you come to this page, and this is the Start Here page. This is where all prompts start. So you roll a die and you get numbers 1 through 6, and then that leads you through the rest of the book, and then you get your prompts. And on a lot of these pages, there are more customization sections that you have to fill out, either based on the answers that you put here at the beginning or that you filled in at some other point. So this is sort of like a choose your own adventure book if you grew up reading those. So once you roll your way through and get your prompt, there's a section in the back. The whole back of the book is a journal, and it's a prompt logbook, and it's all the rest of the pages from 23 all the way to the end. And so you can record your prompts here, and then you could also record what you did with them or some ideas or something like that. So I started this one fresh just for this video. I have another one that I've been filling out, but I figured for the sake of this video, I'd start a fresh copy. So let's generate a prompt. Like I said, it starts here on page 7, and we are going to let the randomization begin. So I am going to roll, and I got a 1. So that tells me that I am going to use a mini size prompt. And I am going to turn right here to prompt 1 and write mini. Prompt size mini, it tells me to go to page 15 next. So I turn to page 15. And now I need to roll again. This time I got a 6. And a 6 in this book is always a lucky roll. So I can pick whatever I want from over here. And I think I'll pick number 1. I'll pick monochromatic. And then it tells me to go to page 17. Here's page 17, and I have to roll again. And I got a 1. So I look over here, and it's telling me that most of the shapes in the block are, and there are 3 options. So I can pick which of my 3 options I want here. Let's go with squares. And then since this is a mini prompt, this is actually the end of the prompt. If you would have gotten one of the other ones, there would have been more things. A mini just has 3 things. There are different sizes of prompts. There are different ways to get them, but you'll notice that every single one of the things that I could get were things that I picked. So I'm not going to end up with some weird color combo or some weird suggestion that really just turns me off and doesn't make me want to make anything. So my prompt is to make a monochromatic block where most of the shapes are squares. I wasn't given any more information than that, so it's pretty wide open about what I can do. Monochromatic means that all the fabrics are going to be in the same color family. So I'm going to go over to my scrap bin and pull out a scrap bin of some color that strikes my fancy. Okay, so I pulled out my orange scrap bin. This is how I store my scraps. I just sort them by color and just sort of pitch them all in here so I can pull from them when I want to use them. And you can see there's a wide range. I've got prints, I've got darks, I've got some lights. Some of these are borderline yellow, but that'll make a good range for me to work with. All right, so most of them are square. So let's start chopping some stuff up and turning it into squares. I am going to do everything without a ruler. As you all know, sometimes I use a ruler and sometimes I don't. But in this case, I'm feeling like we just need to wing it. So this piece is a little on the rectangular side, and I really do want them to be sort of square. I sort of want to live by the prompt and sort of go in that direction. So those look pretty nice to me. Let's go with this guy. And I am really just willy-nilly just reaching in here and finding things that float my boat. All right. So I am not overthinking this at this point at all. And I'm saving these bits up here in case I decide I need some more of it in here later. All right, and this has given us a pretty decent range. So maybe let's start with what we have here and think about what we're going to do with it. So do we want to just start sewing things together and seeing what happens? Or do we want to maybe think it through and sort of force some order on it to start with? I don't know. Let's just sort of lay it out and see where things take us. So this feels kind of interesting. Let's start sewing together some of these pairs. Maybe I'll sew these two together, those two together. I'll just sew together some pairs and let's see how it goes. Okay, so I have sewn everything together in pairs and I just finger pressed them all towards the dark side. I'm liking where this is going. Maybe now we'll sew these two together and these sort of into a row. And maybe these just go together like that. Let's see. All right, that's looking pretty cool. I could just sew these together just like they are, maybe add in an extra one down here, and I would have satisfied the prompt. But I'm looking to make this a little more interesting. The prompt says most of the shapes need to be squares. So what if I take this, which has now become a square, and then I put a border around it, so then it's like a square within a square. I like that idea, so I'm going to do that. And I'm really happy with that. So let's see, what if we then sew this piece onto this? We can put that down here on the bottom. That, I'm sort of digging that, so let's go for that. And you will notice that this is literally how I work. An idea comes to me and I just do it. All right. I don't doubt, I just go. All right. Don't second guess yourself and think, oh no, what's going to happen if this doesn't look right? Well, if it doesn't look right, just throw it over into the pile and then do something else. This is not the end of the world. This is meant to be fun. It's playtime. So sometimes what you do is not going to turn out the way you want it to, and you can just sort of like pivot at that point. But it's a lot more fun to just trust your gut and say, hey, I think that's going to look cool. And most of the time, you're right. Now, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, what would happen if I just came in here and cut it in half this way and then straightened up this other edge? And then I'm going to flip this around this way, and then I get sort of a checkerboard looking effect. I like that. I'm going to sew that together. All right, I'm digging that. So let's think about what's going on over here. What if we did something and just slice through at an angle? Again, that came into my brain and I just did it. This could be terrible. Who knows? Then I'm going to think, what if I open it up like this and put something in there, and then that makes that more square? Now, my first inclination was to do this, but I don't think that's actually big enough to work, so we'll leave that over there. Let's maybe just put in a more solid piece of something in here. Let's look and see what we've got. Now let's go in there and just insert that into this gap. And I'm really loving that. So let's trim that down a little bit. So here's where we are so far. And now I'm thinking, okay, how am I going to sew this together? So this is bigger than this. This is longer than that. What happens if I turn it sideways? It's too long. I like how this forms sort of a diagonal here. So you know what? I'm going to turn around this way. And I'm going to lock that in right there, that diagonal. So I'm going to go ahead and do that because I just saw it and I like it, so I want to keep it. All right, so that's locked in. And now I'm like, okay, well, there's more dark up here. And that sort of looks like, look, it's like hiding behind there. So what do I want to put down here? Let's look. We've got this color that's up here, but it's not over here. We haven't really carried it down. We could put yellow here, this yellowy orange. We could put that down here, and that would sort of make that. Or maybe we could use some squares. Yeah, I think I like that. So I'm going to sew those together and sew it on and see how that looks. And that looks really cool. So I'm going to trim that off and sew that. And here's where we are. I'm feeling good about this. And maybe I'm done and maybe I'm not. For the sake of this video, we're going to say that I'm done. But if I was going to keep going, I might grab some more of this fabric here and add it onto another side somehow. Maybe build it out so the whole piece is more square. But there was nothing in our prompt saying what size the finished block had to be. So I'm just going to stop this for now because I think you've gotten the idea of how I do this sort of thing. I just commit one step at a time. And that's it. You're just making decisions as you go. And sometimes you're going to make this and you're going to like it. And I really do like this. It feels really nice to me. It feels well composed. It feels balanced and it feels interesting to look at. And as you can see, if you just looked at this, you might think that I did this in a really random kind of way. But as you've seen, I really did think through a lot of things and try to bring in balance and order into what could be a super chaotic composition. And of course, this is just one way that I could have interpreted that prompt. That prompt could have led to any number of blocks. So prompts are a really freeing way, but they also sort of help you pick a direction if you get stuck. So for example, when I got stuck trying to figure out what to do here, it was a rectangle, so I thought, oh, I'll make it more square. And to do that, I thought to add this thing in. Same thing here when I thought, well, I'll just make that bigger, but I'll make it into a square. So the prompt can give you direction. So it doesn't just feel like you have unlimited choices. If you shrink the world down, having less options actually makes you more creative. Because I had limited myself to only these scraps, which admittedly is a big old pile of scraps. But when you put limits on things, sometimes you have to get creative to make them work. And that is the real fun of prompts. So I hope you go out and let prompts guide you in some way. Set aside a little time, pull out your sewing supplies, and just have a little fun. It's just playtime. If you get to the end and you hate this, oh well, just throw it in the scrap pile and use it for something else, or consider it a lesson learned. I'll see you again here next time for another episode of the Quilty Life with me, Jenn George Burt.